Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down It Welcome to Derry.
And a ribbon in my hair.
It's been a very interesting week, and episode 2 has a lot to unpack from it. The entries fill with Easter eggs, hidden details, and lots of things from the book. After this episode finished, I was like,
I prayed for this and it happened.
Andy Muschietti is delving deep into the novel's untapped potential, especially with that big reveal at the end. The whole episode is filled to the brim with nods to not only chapters 1 and 2, but also deep cuts from the miniseries. Where we begin is in the aftermath of last week and confirmation that the ending was indeed real. Though there were theories that it might have been a vision, we were saying, yeah, not a happy ending. I kind of saw it as the same sort of thing with Georgie, where a death kickstarted the other characters investigating it. Though Matty acted as that as well, I feel like the cinema was a catalyst to bring other characters in. The episode opens with a recap of that fateful night, and we see things through Lily's POV. POV of your mates getting violently massacred by an eldritch demon. Woo woo! It's such a great way to open the episode though, and I would have loved to have seen this with like a VR headset or something. The attention to detail's amazing as well. We saw Teddy's body hit the projectionist window from Ronnie's view last week, but we see it here from a different angle. This is because, again, we're watching through Lily's eyes, and it's clearly playing on her mind as part of her nightmare. Not only does she think her dad ended up in pickle jars, but she also now dreams of her friends being murdered. Reaching out her hand in the vision, we then cut to her in bed doing the same thing. The trauma is now carrying into her life, and what's worse is that no one believes her. At the end of the episode, she's taken back to Juniper Hill, and we learn that's where she spent time before episode 1. It's also where Henry Bowers was taken after all the murders were pinned on him. He was then let free by Pennywise as one of his weapons to go and stop the Losers Club. Wrongful arrest is a theme of the episode, and this also ties into the books. Welcome to Derry takes us back in time, and it plays massively on nostalgia. Whether it's walking down a certain street, seeing something from our past, or smelling something, our senses are heavily linked with memory. I'm sure you've all caught the scent of something, and it instantly transported you back to a moment in your life. Recently, I've been exploring lots of different fragrances to match my moods and routines, but committing to full-size bottles without knowing if I'll love them isn't exactly ideal. That's when I discovered Scentbird, who are a fragrance subscription service that lets me try out a variety of scents without the full commitment. Each month, I get to choose from over 900 authentic designer and niche fragrances. You receive a generous 8ml vial, which lasts 30 days, and it's perfect for about 120 sprays. It's been so fun experimenting with different scents that complement my daily activities, and whether I'm hitting the gym, organising my office, or just enjoying a self-care day, Scentbird's always there for me. Now this month, I've been trying Nightscape, Gentleman's Society by Givenchy, The Harmonist Sunforce, and Chocolate Greedy by Montel Paris. I think I've pronounced that right. Here is a quick tip as well. Don't just blast it, straight onto your neck like a flamethrower. Spray it from about 6 to 8 inches away, hit your pulse points like your wrist and collarbone, and let it sit for about a minute. Also, a light mist over some clothes works wonders if you want the scent to actually stick around longer than a Marvel post-credit scene. The best part as well is that I'm not stuck with one scent forever. I get to switch it up each month, and whether I want to be a hero, a villain, or do a side quest, whatever the vibe is, it's perfect for building my own cinematic universe, but it smells good. And if you want to try it out now, they've got a great offer of 55% off your first month when you use the code SPOILERS2 or scan the QR code on screen right now. You get to try your first fragrance from Scentbird for only $8.97, and your next month will be $17.95. Again, that's SPOILERS2 or scan the QR code on screen, and yeah, that means you can start your own scent arc without dropping a blockbuster budget. Huge thank you again to Scentbird for sponsoring the video. Now let's get back into the breakdown. Now after Lily wakes up, we get a look at the intro for the show, and I have to say, this is one of the best HBO I've ever made. We get a tour of Derry drawn in the iconic 1950s/1960s look, almost looking like something that Don Draper or someone would design. The art style is mid-century commercial illustration, which is usually associated with post-war optimism. With the show set in 1962, we're at the tail end of America's post-war optimism, where everything was painted out as being completely perfect. It's something that's been parodied in games like Fallout, and we know this idealism didn't last too long. The 1960s were a time of big cultural change, from the swinging 60s in the UK to the hippie movement in the US. Vietnam was looming on the horizon, and the ideals of capitalism were being questioned on campuses. Anti-communist movements also started to mount up as well, and there was a wave of censorship about to hit the country. For now though, Derry's your typical American town filled with abundance. The intro is set to Patience and Prudence's song A Smile in a Ribbon, and since hearing it, I've had this song on repeat. It's the typical bubblegum pop at the time, but I think the lyrics are actually quite interesting. We hear them say, "The louder I say I'm happy, the more I believe it's so." Which is what poor Lilly has to do. She pretends she's okay for the fear of being sent back to Juniper Hill. The intro portrays classic Americana, but twists it to reveal the dark undercurrent beneath the American dream. Much like how Lilly pretends to be okay on the surface, she's hiding something below, just like Derry. Now we begin with the Paul Bunyan statue, which we saw in chapter 1, and it came alive in chapter 2. The sign Maddie passed in the intro also showcased it as well, and the papers mentioned that it was going to be built for definite. The public's furious, and we'll see more of that later. In the book, people hated it and thought it was tacky, and an art teacher at one point even tried to blow it up. So yeah, this coming in at the intro, it's just a symbol that not everything is right in Derry and not everyone's that happy, even if we're getting this idealized version. We then see an American family having a lovely little picnic. This might be at Water Tower Square, which was mentioned briefly in the book. And yeah, you can see that beside the Bunyan statue in it chapter 2. This is also in chapter 1 where the Losers Club talked about what they were afraid of, and we got that weird clown that may or may have not been Pennywise. I think it was though. We can also spot the standpipe, and this picnic fits in with the backstory. We mentioned last week how families would picnic near the standpipe before the horrors of Pennywise led to kids being killed, which tainted the area. We then see a young girl looking into a storm drain, just like Georgie. There's even a missing persons poster like the one we see later. There's also an Uncle Sam poster above her head. It appears to be the classic "I Want You" for the US Army depiction that was used for a recruitment drive in 1917. That was used for World War I and based on the iconic Lord Kitchener one. And I want you to hit the thumbs up, you son of a bitch. This kind of plays on the history of Derry as it's mentioned in the book though, as many people from the city ended up fighting in both wars. The poster's on the side of Keen's Pharmacy, which also features in the book and movie. This is a place where Eddie got his medicine from, and Keen was well aware he was just giving him gazebos. Sorry, placebos. Mr. Keen is also a major part of that reveal at the end, and it's something that, yeah, we'll discuss later on. To the right, though, we have the Jade of the Orient. The restaurant is in a different location from the novel, and even chapter 2, but as we mentioned last week, they likely moved premises, which might even be explained in the show, as, yeah, they've highlighted it twice now. This is where the Losers Club met back about when they were adults, and Pennywise used this as a place to torment them. There's also the Capitol Cinema, which, yeah, you know that place very well, I'm sure. Burn into your nightmares. It's playing The Music Man, which is the film that we saw it showing last week. We then see a covered bridge, and this is a big place in Derry, which I think is where Henry sliced up Ben in it chapter 1. Kids are jumping in the river, which was also something we saw in chapter 1 as well, with the Losers Club stripping down before jumping into a gorge. As the intro continues, we then see kids being tempted by Pennywise, who's holding a lovely little lollipop, but don't take it. It looks like an octopus with yellow eyes, and yeah, while he was more of an arachnid in the miniseries and a mantis / spider hybrid in the movies, Pennywise was also described as having tentacles in the book. After that, the images start to get darker, and we see the inside of Juniper Hill. It looks like a kid's being given a lobotomy while a staff ignorer screams and smiles gleefully. It's a horrific procedure that chips into the brain, and it was usually done in asylums like this one to leave someone in almost a constant state of sedation. We then see a family moving into what appears to be 29 Neobolt Street. This was the well house that's set above the central part of the Derry sewers. I actually just went back on the chapter. I've read this, I'm reading through it like all the time, just listening to the audiobook as well. That's my life at the moment. But yeah, we just literally went through the chapter on it in the book, and it says that if any house in Derry's haunted, then this is. It was imagined to be owned by an army family at one point, with the book saying the owner probably spent time away and then one day it just fell into disrepair. Homeless people then used it for a shelter, with Eddie running into one who was trying to sexually assault him, and he looked like a leper. The story in general is of course about childhood trauma and all the forms it can manifest in. As such, 29 Neobolt Street is the nexus point of the killer clown. This is something that's hammered home in the transition, as we see a teacher showing the effects of an atomic bomb striking the house. We can also see a red balloon floating up. The kids are being told to duck in cover, which wouldn't help if you were that close to ground zero. It's also something we saw the turtle mention in the posters last week, which is foreshadowing Mature in the Turtle. The poster is up in the room as well and can be seen to the right. It's an image you'd expect to feature a Vault Boy from Fallout or something, and it reflects suppress the fears of the time. This is something the Strategic Air Command General also wants to stop by using Pennywise, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say. Pennywise might even cause the Cuban Missile Crisis. Yes, I never thought I'd say it, but yeah, that looks like it's where we're going. Pennywise is here though, controlling the projector, which is reminiscent of the cinema last week and the slide scene from chapter 1. We then see a shootout with Pennywise as an old style car is being shot at. Guy's even diving out the window like he's Neo. This is the Bradley gang car, which is the same one we see being excavated at the end of the episode. They were a gang who were killed during the Prohibition era of 1929. They were based on the real life Brady gang who were killed in an FBI ambush in Bangor, Maine, aka the place that inspired Derry. A mural for this was shown in It Chapter 1, and I'm guessing the series might finally show it playing out. Now, during the third interlude in the book, Mike interviews Norbert Keane about the massacre. Keane explained that the gang were on the run and tried to buy a load of bullets in Derry. The gun shop owner recognized them from the papers and told them to wait while he went and procured their order. This shop was Banning's, which we see to the right. He then rounded up a posse to ambush them when they came back to collect it. A wide variety of Derry citizens came out to take part in it, and it was a big form of vigilante justice. Some even saw Pennywise there, and witnesses said there was a strange figure wearing farmer clothing and a face full of clown makeup. As the scene continues, we can then see the gun shop on the right and the public wiping out the gang. His pose here also fits with what the book said about Pennywise seemingly floating outside of a window, shooting at the criminals. On the right, there's also a building called Bowers Roadside, which is of course a nod to Henry's family. We then see the fallout of the Kitchener Ironworks explosion. It's a story we saw Ben researching at Chapter 1, and there was a massive Easter egg hunt that had loads of kids attending. Things went awry though, and one of the buildings blew up. It sent the entire town into a state of grief, with several children dying. It took them days to clean up the bodies, and a kid's head was found in a tree about half a week after it. So yeah, not a very good memory for the town. You might also notice the Pennywise trailers parked up at the side, and we saw him dancing inside this in It Chapter 1. The horrific intro then forms into the Welcome to Derry sign. I have to say, the attention to detail is amazing here, and I'm glad that Andy Muschietti got a chance to come back, even if it's just for this intro alone. After this, we then see police camped outside the Grogan's flat. Grogan is a very important name to the It book, but what happens is a big spoiler, so I'm going to save that for the spoiler section at the end of the video. You watched our breakdown last week. I did read a passage that did spoil it, but to be fair, I didn't know it was this character, and I was just theorizing at the time. But yeah, do not ever go back and watch my old videos, because they're shit. This is of course during the time of segregation though, and it appears to be where the black citizens live at. During this era, black families were pushed away from the suburbs and often denied loans and mortgages. Racism is a big part of the show, and it's retroactively regarded as the sinister underbelly of the supposed American idealism. The family apartment also looks like Bev's home in Chapter 1, and this denotes just how poor this family is. Now, we heard last week how the police try to pin Maddie's disappearance on Ronnie's dad, and they're now trying to do that with the murders. We also see a massive sign for Derry Pickles, which also ties in with Lily's father's death. So we have two traumas based around dads in this shot. The younger officer then jokes about the projectionist in the movie theatre with a candlestick, which is a reference to the board game Cluedo, or Clue if you're in America, and I know I've been having a go at America, but I love you fuckers. The other officer is having none of it though, and is under pressure to pin this on Mr. Grogan while finding the joke disrespectful. Interestingly, there were no bodies found at the cinema, just a hell of a lot of blood. So just like the kids in Chapter 1, they could be floating below the town. Muschietti had them floating literally through the air, but often they were found face down in the water. There's a section of the book that talks about the history of Neobolt Street, which I've just reread luckily, and it basically goes over how some kids broke into the well house. They fell over a railing and into the water and spent all night clawing at the sides trying to climb out. With nothing to grab and no one to hear their cries, they eventually became exhausted and fell asleep. The next day they were found face down floating in the water, and that's kind of where the float thing came out of. And the fact that Pennywise says it like 500 times in the book. The desperation to pin the murders on one man though is why Henry was blamed for everything at the end of Chapter 1. In the book, they tried to get him to confess to killing all the children, when in reality, he only killed his father. The attempt to get Grogan arrested for the crimes though reflects a grim history of America. Many black men were wrongfully accused of crimes across the years, from Emmett Till to the Central Park Five. It's no surprise that a town with a group called the Legion of White Decency had such a problem with racism, which we are seeing play out here. Mr. Grogan has an alibi though, but that doesn't help when he's arrested later on. Ronnie's desperate to get to the truth, but the grandmother wants Ronnie to live in reality and not think she's Nora Charles. In case you haven't heard of her, because I hadn't, but thankfully Google is our friend, she's a character in a series of detective films. Fittingly, Ronnie's going to investigate what's going on with the kids going missing, and we also get her full name, which is Veronica Groga. And yeah, spoiler section for what happens with her, but it is mentioned a fair bit in the book. At the moment though, the child escapes the movies, and we later learn that William Hanlon tries to escape via science. The book and movie had the Losers Club with all their own escape methods, such as Ben using the library, Richie doing comedy, Stan studying birds, and Bill writing books and stuff. It's a coping mechanism that shifts their focus, and they use a lot of these distractions in the battle against Pennywise. And also, Matty sucked his pacifier last week, so yeah, all these characters have it. The grandmother wants Ronnie to get her education and leave Derry, but the book explains there's actually a curse over the town, and this stops a lot of people leaving it. Only those with the strongest wills are able to do it, and this is why the Losers Club all led successful lives after leaving. They were also afflicted with prosperity by Pennywise, so that they never felt the need to return. Unfortunately, Matty wasn't able to, and it's kind of like not being able to escape Silent Hill. We can also see a photo of JFK on the wall just before Ronnie's caught. The president was someone who tried to reshape America, and this was by getting rid of all the injustices that black Americans faced. So with that in mind, it totally makes sense that the house has a portrait of President Kennedy. Leroy even later says that if someone has an issue with them living in the burbs, then take it up with JFK. Ronnie is petrified though that her father will be taken away. Considering that later on we learn her mother died in childbirth, she'll do anything to keep her father safe. We then cut to Leroy and he's listening to Oh You Send Me by Sam Cooke, which is an incredible song. It's a love song that talks about being transported to another place when they're with their woman. It's fitting here as Leroy's wife finally joins him in Derry. Cooke was also a big part of the civil rights movement, with his song A Change Is Gonna Come being a major anthem during that time, and even today to be honest. As for Leroy, he's managed to make it to the suburbs, unlike the Grogans. He also drinks a PBR. The newspapers are reporting on Kennedy sending more military advisors to South Vietnam, and it's a clever piece mirroring Mr. Hanlon's life. After the French were defeated in Vietnam, the country was split in two. The North was ruled by the communists, while the South was under more of a Western influence. It's very much like Korea, which is a war that he took part in. He ended up becoming a POW, and I do wonder if we'll explore more of his time as a prisoner. The article might also be referring to Kennedy sending military advisors to train the Army of the Republic of Vietnam. This was to stop the perceived threat of communist influence in Asia, especially after the Korean War ended in a stalemate. We can also see the talk of an atomic test ban. This eventually happened in 1963 when both the USA and Russia signed a treaty. This is right after the Cuban Missile Crisis, which, as we've been theorizing, is probably going to be a major part of the series. The world was hours away from an atomic apocalypse though, and I feel like Pennywise is going to feast off this fear. Will then arrives, and we learn over the course of the episode that he's not exactly the son Leroy wanted. He's more into science and space and sports, and it's a far cry from the macho airmen who fought in the Korean War. But for now, they've got a lovely new house, despite the locals giving them side eyes. Now Will's moving in presents a telescope. It's presented like the dad had the idea, but it was actually Will's mother who told Leroy to get it, showing that he probably isn't that close to Will. It's something we see in the scene as well, as it's just kind of awkward. The telescope is actually from the antique shop in town, which is called Second Hand Rose. This is a big part of the It lineage, and this is where Bill rediscovered his old bike Silver. This appeared in the movies during It Chapter 2, and it's a place we got our Stephen King cameo. In this episode though, we actually get to meet Rose and get an almighty deep cut that references It Chapter 2. When Mrs. Hanlon walks in, we hear a guy saying,
baseball cards, bowling ball, beaver.
Which is exactly what King's character says when Bill's struggling to speak.
Baseball card, the bowling ball, the banjo, beaver.
The guy even looks a bit like Stephen King when he was younger. The antique shop is much nicer than it was in 2016 though, but it still has license plates above the counter. It also has posters for King of the Zombies and Attack of the Giant Leeches, with a ladder matching the theme of nuclear radiation. Rose will reportedly play a major role in the show as well, and will connect with the kids we see later on who are spying on the dig site. There's also Chubby Checkers as well, which is a name I've always loved. We mentioned last week how Native Americans sealed Pennywise away, and Mike explained in chapter 2 that they used the ritual of Chud to do this. He even stole the vessel, which is funny here as his grandparents met one of the tribe in the past. I wonder if we'll in fact see that vessel at some point, but unfortunately I couldn't see it in the store. If Leroy wanted something cool for his kid though, he should have checked out our merch store right below the video. There we have a range of Welcome to Derry inspired shirts, including our Pennywise double-sided one and our brand new balloon design. We also have ones from lots of your favourite franchises and films, and you can get ones for Alien, Predator, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, lots of different movies. Even got kid sizes as well. So yeah, perfect for Will, mate, and I just thought I'd let you know that, Leroy. Either way, we see how Will's very smart, and that he also doesn't want to spy on the neighbours. The wallpaper in his room also features cowboys, but I do wonder if they'll change this to spacemen to fit the era. Also wonder if Leroy learning the truth about the base will make him try and keep the kid away from being fascinated with space, due to the dark things that could exist out there in the darkness. Ooh. The couple then finally get some time together in bed as Leroy looks through the crime scene photos of the attack. This basically backs up his confirmation that it was a Russian model gun, and it's something that he uses later on in the episode. This entire thing is something he's hiding from his wife though, like his Instagram searches, and we later learn that she might be the reason they had to move. Cutting to school, we hear Why Do Fools Fall in Love by Frankie Lemon and the Teenagers. This is a song that featured in George Lucas's American Graffiti, which is set in the same year as the show. We then see Lily's mate Marge, and she's again obsessed with her self-image. I do get the feeling that this is kind of this show's Bob from Stranger Things. Kind of a nerdy girl trying to fit in who ultimately ends up a victim. She has a blue butterfly in her hair as well, with them typically representing transformation. She wants to be part of the Mean Girls and will do anything to fit in. She's ignored though, and clearly not naturally part of the clique, and we see one of the girls is also reading Tiger Beat, the classic teen girl magazine. Now actually, the magazine didn't start until 1965, so this releasing in 1962 is a terrible production error, and I hope somebody got fired for that blunder. The girls are trying to convince one of them to share who their crush is though, and the 1960s Regina George is gaslighting her to reveal who she fancies. And when she does it, they all make fun of her. You know, this is something I'm sure lots of people did in school, and they all think Scotty Mills is the absolute ick. But yeah, to be fair, I think he's I like his Radio 2 show. That's one for my UK heads. Sorry, you will not get that joke if you're in America. And it's not even a good joke if you're from England. The poor lad has a very stuffy nose though, and from what, judging by Marge's impression, he's a bit of a loser. Makes the girls laugh, and she seems to be fitting in, but the leader of the group rules with an iron fist, and she ends up basically shutting her down. It's something that also happens later on when she makes fun of her best friend. The girls think her impression's hilarious, but the queen bee gets annoyed. She looks at her mates laughing and brings her down a peg by asking if she wore that same sweater the day before. Like that Simpsons episode where Marge has to keep cutting the dress up, and mate, I know that feeling. I wore the same suit for 2 James Bond videos and I was getting comments about it. It's like, come on mate, it's an expensive suit, I'm gonna wear it more than once. But yeah, that's why I started the merch store below the video, where you can get an abundance of t-shirt designs that people definitely will want to see you wearing more than once. Lilly was right not to trust her though, and it's a conflict that I think is only gonna get worse. And she's not as bad as Henry Bowers, you know, she's not cutting her name into Kid's stomach with a knife and killing her dad, but I do think she's kind of the bully that might push people towards Pennywise. We then see Ronnie return to school as everyone stares at her. Lily's clearly distressed, but her mate can only watch on as she's desperate to join the Derry Plastics. There's of course also a racial element to this as well, and Ronnie is seen as the other. Cutting to inside the school, a kid gets hit with a classic kick me sign, and inside the class there's a nuclear sign on the right. The threat of the atomic apocalypse is ever present, and you can almost taste the fear in the air. The dead kids from last week are referenced as well, and we learn there was a candlelight vigil. However, the principal switches to the day's lunch menu immediately following this, showing that life always goes on. However, it also highlights how people aren't really processing the trauma, which is a theme that runs through the book. In our breakdown of the miniseries, we talked about how it represents childhood trauma and how you can successfully repress it for years and years. Eventually though, when you're an adult, it will pop back up and you'll have to deal with it. And it often isn't at a convenient time. I've always felt that Pennywise represents that, and basically you have to come together go into the past and deal with the trauma head on as much as possible. Marge then tries to talk to Lilly, but they have a really strained relationship. They almost have a friendship away from the popular girls, but later Lily's made fun of by her friend to fit in. Marge is only interested in popularity, and it's just a superficial thing that ultimately won't make her happy. It's the kind of thing that would make her a prime victim of Pennywise, whereas the Losers Club share an actual valuable friendship, and thus when they work together, they're able to defeat it. She warns her to stay away from Ronnie so Patty and the crew won't make fun of her. Lilly has much bigger problems in trying to fit in with the patty cakes though. The group name also works twofold, as the leader's called Patty and they also play patty cakes at the table. Will then shows up late and is berated by the teachers before being embarrassed by one of the kids. In the end though, this leads to him starting up a friendship with a kid who's impressed by his choice of pencil. In general though, I like that we're seeing more of the school politics. The two movies and the novel as well, they started off in the school but mainly took place during the summer holidays. So we didn't really get much of the school and how the kids were basically bullied by not only the students but also the teachers. These tensions with Will at school are also shared by his father, and we learn that Masters was apparently the one who attacked him, which was something we theorized. However, Leroy doesn't believe this story. He recognized the gun as a Makarov PM, which I'm sure you'll recognize as being a standard Soviet issue. And yeah, let's be honest, we all know that from playing Call of Duty. Unless you actually know guns, but I'm British, mate, yeah, let me off. Later we see Leroy going to Masters, discussing the attack, and he needs to see firsthand if the guy can use the gun. Masters can't load it, and Makarovs were apparently notoriously hard to use. Not for me though, I just pressed square and it reloaded automatically. However, this shows he wasn't one of the attackers, and it all speaks to a bigger conspiracy on the base. We also learn that Leroy got this gun after being a POW. The Korean prisoner camp is how he got those scars, and they were notoriously torturous. The facilities were even described as being barely more than animal pens. African American POWs were targeted specifically for anti-American propaganda, and this is something that's happened throughout numerous wars. In World War I and II, Germany dropped flyers asking why they fought for a country that didn't treat them as equals. It's something that the Viet Cong also tried with the black GIs. As mentioned earlier, both wars were similar-ish in that a country was split in half by communist rule. Funnily enough, the B-52 was also used heavily in Vietnam during Operation Arclight. But that's enough history for now. Can you tell I've been watching a lot of Armchair Historian recently? Anyway, after confronting General Shaw, we learned it was all a test. It was all just a test, mate, and you bloody passed it. Yeah, they beat the crap out of him, put a gun in his face, and it was all just to see if he could live up to the task they have, and he passed. Congratulations. Now, why this is done is because it turns out that Leroy has a brain injury that's supposedly impossible to recover from. Shaw recruited some men who pretended to be spies, and they tried to get information on the new B-52. We noticed last week they had American accents, and it was a bit of a giveaway. Leroy, of course, didn't give over any information, and thus in the end, they can trust him with the secrets. We learn that Hanlon has a damaged amygdala, but somehow managed to continue flying in the war. Now, the amygdala is part of the brain that controls emotional responses. A damaged amygdala could lead to reduced fear responses, and this explains just why Leroy's being recruited. As Pennywise affects people through fear, it preys on your worst nightmare, and the more can make you afraid, the more power it has. As such, Leroy will be integral to what General Shaw's trying to do, as it won't have power over him, which Shaw reveals later. Now, I did kind of go back and forth on this reveal, as I've always been attached to the idea that no one really knew about the creature. Pennywise, of course, mainly goes after kids, and yeah, even when you're older, like we've seen the Losers Club, they forget pretty much most of their childhood, which is part of something that Pennywise can do psychically. This probably also means that the army's been aware of him since about the Second World War, which is likely when the next season will take place. The production team have done lots of interviews on the show and have said that each season will take place during a different cycle further back in time. So yeah, the next one's going to be like 27 years before this one. I'm guessing that season will explore the army discovering Pennywise and then putting plans in place to build up this base. But knowing that, and knowing that he's probably going to cause the Cuban Missile Crisis, does this mean that Pennywise made Hitler? I don't know, mate, but the way the show's going, it could be a possibility. It'd be like the end of that Kingsman movie. I do feel like the season will end with the entire base being massacred though, but I'm not sure how it was all kept secret from the rest of the government, who probably would have had to pay for the project. And yeah, obviously we know they don't ever bring it up again in the 80s or during the 2020 2016, 2017 when chapter 2 takes place. But yeah, let me know, but I'm just someone who's always preferred the idea that Pennywise was a creature living in the town who popped up, attacked, and then bailed before people cottoned on. And the crimes always got basically laid on some poor schmuck who just happened to be there. But yeah, long story short, in the end, Leroy's taken to the secret hangar, and as we predicted last week, they're trying to dig up Pennywise. Shaw wants to use it as a weapon to fight back at the Russians, which, yeah, sounds like a bold plan, Cotton. We see scientists logging artifacts such as baseball shirts, and this might be the Derry baseball team that we see in 2016 during a chapter 2. There's also what looks like an iron smelting machine, which could be part of the Kitchener Ironworks. Shaw mentions that Cuba and Russia are getting too close and that they need to do something drastic. They're planning to put nukes on Cuban land, which, as we know, was the precursor to the Cuban Missile Crisis. But yeah, as much as I'm unsure on how it's going to go, at the moment we are 2 for 2 on predictions. Let's fucking go! Inside the command center, we can also see maps of Cuba which show how far the nukes can hit. Shaw wants to win the Cold War before it gets to that point by unleashing the interdimensional glamour that feeds on fear. It's very X-Files-y and reminded me of the Dead Zone, but still it's a wild departure from the source material, where we kind of only really see things from the Losers Club point of view. But yeah, it's something that I think if they don't handle it perfectly, then it might cause some controversy, but I'll stop harping on about it. Anyway, we see Leroy's wife walking around town, and it's the theme from A Summer's Place. It's the, you know the one. Upon getting our establishing shot, we can also see a Welcome to Derry sign, as well as one for Bangor Chew. Bangor is what King based the city on, which is why it gets a nod here. We also have a tasty Coca-Cola advert, which is one of them drinks that kind of feels like a symbol of America. It's the idealistic American town, and it reminded me of the scene in Back to the Future where Marty McFly first went back in time. The first person we see is also a younger Mr. Keene. We saw him during It Chapter 1, and he's who Bev said looked like Clark Kent. He then creepily said that she looked like Lois Lane when she tried on his glasses.
I'm getting the word nonce.
We also saw him, albeit a bit older, in It Chapter 2 when Eddie returned to the pharmacy. She then passes the cinema, which is closed, and we see a man delivering sliced pickles from the factory Lilly's dad worked at. And it kind of foreshadows the big scare at the end of the episode. We then cut to the Falcon Tavern, and this is the place we see later that leads to the formation of the Black Spot. Now, it is in Derry 15 years earlier than where it is in the book, but we'll discuss that later. There are some teenagers also standing outside smoking, dressed like James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. They stare as she walks past, and we get a shot which you may recognise. This is the alleyway where Ben was patched up after Henry sliced him. In Chapter 1, we get a similar shot looking out into the street, and I thought this was a nice little touch. She then buys some flowers and walks past the Paul Bunyan statue site. The public despises it, and we see a dude eggs the sign. We see the top half being put in place with people protesting it. The statue's a place that people absolutely hate, and like every time it's brought up in the book, it's someone's talking about it with some real venom in their voice. Bunyan's a folklore character in American and Canadian history, and he's usually accompanied by a blue ox. After seeing the furious protesters by the statue, Miss Hanlon then heads into the butchers. There's a woman who says that the Grand Dames of Derry won't stand for that statue. They're a group that had a badge on the Derry welcome sign last week, and as far as I'm aware, they aren't in the book, but let me know if we missed it, because it's a fucking massive book. Mrs. Hanlon, though, she's just there to get meat for a roast, and Stan Kirsch, he isn't going to discriminate, which does surprise her. Kirsch is also an interesting name, as that was the name of the woman that Bev met when she returned home. She was actually one of Pennywise's forms who told Bev how her father came to Derry and joined the circus. In the book, he took the name Robert Gray and was Pennywise the Dancing Clown. So I wonder if this is actually Pennywise in disguise once more. Guy's just working 9 to 5 as a butcher because there's not much else to do. Nah, but I think this is a real guy, and Pennywise posed as that woman and then basically touched upon the Bob Gray past to kind of touch upon what Pennywise did in the town. But yeah, there is that other read there as well, and Pennywise does appear human-like at points, which we see in the supermarket later. He also appeared as a creepy librarian in the first film, and I feel like the Kirsch family are probably one of his victims that he then appears as. Sort of like the family in the car last week. However, he is very unsettling, and even jokes that the kids call him Stanley the Cleaver. The meat she buys is also presented in a red piece of paper with some string, which, again, could be a nod to the balloons that Pennywise is known for, but it might be a reach. In the end, whether he's Pennywise or not, he does turn a blind eye to the bullies beating up a kid on the street. This is something that adults did in the book, and at one point Henry assaulted Bev and one of her neighbours just simply looked away. Pennywise has a lot of the adults in town under a constant state of apathy, and this is so they don't care too much about the missing kids. She hasn't been here long enough for that to be susceptible though, and the attack not only scares her, but also the fact that everyone's ignoring it. It speaks to corruption, fear, and the hate that the adults have for the children. It's also pretty similar to the miniseries where Mike was attacked on the street and only one adult stopped it from happening, which is a cool Easter egg as Mike is her grandson. The poor kid's then brutalized and a man just lets the kids pass and everyone stares at her. Mrs. Hanlon isn't going to take it though, as she thinks boys should be kind and nice instead of the bullies that we've seen. Boys will be boys is what Kirsch excuses it as though, and it is a phrase that's been used throughout history to excuse bad behaviour. Mrs. Hanlon's confused as to why they weren't in school, and Will's also worried that she'll embarrass him if she tries to track down their mothers. He doesn't tell her about the bullies, and it's just like how Leroy didn't mention anything about the attack on the barracks, probably for the fear that she would take matters into her own hands. This is something that's alluded to when Leroy brings up Shreveport, which might be a place she quote-unquote caused trouble in. They also say they're not fighting, they're talking, and that this is how they talk. It's clearly rehearsed and something they've said before to try and shield Will. But ultimately, it's just the characters hiding things from each other and not really communicating.
Okay, you want to talk about it?
And thus, knowing there's not going to really be any talking, Will goes upstairs. He mentions that they had a brick thrown through their car window and she was sitting in places Leroy says she wasn't supposed to. Also feel like Shreveport may refer to a place in Louisiana, which is a southern state that had Jim Crow laws at the time that segregated black and white citizens. Seemingly, she tried to break these rules, which led to them having to leave their home and arrive here in Derry. Although she says it's due to Leroy's job. Either way, I do feel it's similar to how Rosa Parks became famous for refusing to move to the back of the bus. Parks was arrested for this, which it's mental. You could get arrested for not moving to the back of the bus, but it sparked off a massive boycott of the city's public transport. It became a pivotal moment in the civil rights movement, and though it happened in 1955, which is 7 years before this, we know that racism, didn't disappear overnight. She then tries to get Leroy to open up, but he hides behind the legal secrecy he has due to his job. Cutting to Ronnie, we can hear her father and grandmother arguing, and whereas Leroy's family argued by not opening up due to his job, this is the complete opposite. In her room, we also have a poster for A Raisin in the Sun and Teenagers from Outer Space. This shows how obsessed she is with movie, as they're both quite niche films. A Raisin in the Sun is about a black family living in an apartment in Chicago who have to deal with the death of their father figure, potentially mirroring the missing mother figure here who we see a picture of next, which all kind of subtly foreshadows what's about to happen. She hears a heartbeat as the bed consumes her, and eventually this turns into the inside of her mother's womb. It's very much like Nightmare on Elm Street, or a bit more niche, The Conjuring 3 with the waterbed. The effects here are great though, and they do so much with so little. Just seeing it transform is terrifying, and it's an incredible moment in the episode. The red lighting also reflects the red lighting motif that they used at the cinema last week. She then exits her mother in a birth scene that feels very similar to the woman in the car last week. She comes out all bloody, and it's not too dissimilar to what Bev looked like after the bathroom blood scene in chapter 1. It seems to imply that her mother died in childbirth, and Ronnie has severe guilt over this. It's horrific as the mother becomes the bed itself, and she says how Ronnie will kill her father as well. She's also still connected by the umbilical cord, which feels like a physical representation of how she's connected to guilt and fear. The stomach then turns into the teeth that we've seen Pennywise have in chapter 1 and 2, and I felt like it was a lot like the defibrillator scene in The Thing, which again is another classic moment in horror. We then see his trademark yellow eyes, and it feels like the slow burn leading to the Pennywise reveal, like he's slowly waking up, ready for this cycle. Ronnie has to bite her way free, and the mother stands up and rushes towards her, just like how Mrs. Kirsch ran towards Bev. Her dad busts in, it's all okay, but yeah, very, very horrifying moment. We then go back to the Falcon Tavern, and as we mentioned last week, the black soldiers from the Derry base were eventually not allowed to drink in the town, which could build out from this moment. The guys here are discussing the attack on Leroy, and only Dick Halloran wasn't questioned. This, I suspect, was because he's actually doing secret stuff for the general, so there was no need to keep up appearances. Last week we discussed how Dick Halloran of course also comes from The Shining and is a massive part of King's interconnected universe. He's of course a psychic and will likely be needed in the fight against Pennywise. Now the Falcon is actually a bar that according to the book opened in 1973, but yet in the show it's operating in the 60s, but we do know that down the line it becomes a gay bar. This is somewhere where Adrian Mellon ended up going a lot, and he was killed at the beginning of It Chapter 2, so it does have a long connection to the story. Like Leroy, Dick's also sworn to secrecy and can't open up. We then see Chief Bowers harassed by the Derry councilmen who want him to pin the murders on Mr. Grogan. He seems to have a bit more decency than his descendants, as he is of course Henry Bowers' grandfather. Butch Bowers was a policeman in Muschietti's adaptations, but in the book he was a dirt poor farmer that was basically a massive racist. He ended up having a feud with the Hanlons and then burned down their chicken coop in a racist attack. The authorities in Derry then sided with Hanlon, made him pay money to him, and because of this, Butch Bowers held a constant grudge against the family, which he passed on to Henry. Now in the book, the councilman actually pressured Major Fuller, which led to Fuller offering a place on the base for the men to go and drink at. They then created the Black Spot, which was a hangout for them to all basically have a sanctuary away from racists. However, this was also burned down, and it sort of repeated the chicken coup attack. Here, they threaten Bowers' job, which is why he pressures Lilly later on, and also asks the barman to eject them. Okay, so maybe he wasn't a decent guy after all, but at least he believes in police procedure, I guess? Though it's pretty obvious what's about to happen with the barman. I also like that Halloran is the one to call it straight away. And yeah, it's just a nice touch since he's a psychic. They then head off to get some moonshine, and this bit really made me laugh. The young airman says he can handle it, and then we of course cut to him absolutely wasted. They then head back to the base, and the air police grills the lads until they reveal that Dick has special privileges. He's afforded these because he's so integral to finding Pennywise, and this is because he's got the shine. He's got the shining. King's books, of course, usually focus on some form of a psychic ability, and some believe that all of his main characters all have the shine. I'm hoping that we may even get a True Knot reference, as I'd love to see more of them. And yeah, they are roaming around at this point. I love the transition here though as we go to the pavement to the Barrens, and they used similar effects to this in the opening of chapter 2. Here we see as the military looks for items that will lead them to it, and the soldiers have now turned into archaeologists, which gave me some major Indiana Jones vibes. The local Native American tribe are also spying on them as well, and I presume that this is the ones that banished it in the past using the ritual of Chud. Mike ended up meeting with them where they explained their past and passed on the ritual. They will probably end up butting heads with the army, who are of course wanting to dig up the space creature and cause loads of shit. Rose is also part of that tribe, and we're finally getting more of this story that was basically created for the movies. There they learn that the ritual of Chud was Himalayan text, and I do feel it'll get brought up and explained in more detail in the series. At the moment though, Dick is hung over as hell, and it turns out that they haven't found anything in 4 months. Alcohol actually dulls one's ability to shine, which is why both Jack and Danny Torrance ended up becoming alcoholics. The ghost just got too much, and this was a way they could basically shut out the voices. Now, as Dick has special abilities, he's been tasked with finding objects that will hopefully lead them to it itself. It's reminiscent of things like MK Ultra or the paranormal exploration of the 60s. It's very X-Files, Stranger Things, and kind of reminds me of one of my favourite games, which is Control. In that game, some objects become altered items or objects of power when paranormal energy comes close to them. It seems that each object involved in the major delusions controlled by Pennywise has some sort of psychic energy to it, so Dick can ultimately find them. The objects are things that were laced throughout the book interludes, and at the end, the military digs up an old style car. There's Tommy guns and money stuffed in a dead body, and yeah, this is obviously the Bradley gang that we mentioned in the intro. So moving forward, Dick may locate objects connected to previous Derry massacres, and thus the intro kind of hints what's going to be coming down the line. I feel like, and obviously having reread the interludes, that these might include the story of the settlers going missing, which was actually kind of similar to Roanoke, Claude Hero's weapons from killing a lot of poker players, and something to do with the kitchen at Ironworks. Maybe an Easter egg. Maybe I'll point out the Easter eggs in a video. Right now though, the biggest mystery for me is how the US military knows about Pennywise, or why it has so much power. Hopefully that gets explained soon because yeah, it's a little bit out there. Now while Dick's out at the dig site, poor old Lilly has to sit alone as her friends with the popular girls. Ignoring her advice, Lilly talks to Ronnie and they call her dad Hatchet Hank. Ronnie says that she's had her own interaction with the being, which is very similar to the Losers Club, who all saw their own unique nightmares. Lilly is the only one who can help Ronnie's dad though, and she doesn't want to tell the police what really happened at the cinema. She said that Hank wasn't there and she doesn't know what happened, which Ronnie points out sounds like she's scared to tell the truth. I really love this scene though, as Patty Cake bangs away in the background and the quick cuts and edits just ramp up the tension. Ronnie's outburst doesn't help her get status in school either, and she's then given attention, which is where she meets Will. The kid from earlier is also eating his lunch in the hall and appears to be a member of the school marching band. Also, nice attention to detail in that the clock says it's nearly midday. Not a big detail, but I like that it's lunchtime and they have the clock set at the right time. He also has pictures of baseball players, which I think might be Minnie Minoso, but come on, I'm British, I'm not that versed in this history, mate. There's also a still of Steve Reeves as Hercules in the 1958 movie. He's got a massive crush on Marge as well, and he sees her walking in slow motion to You'll Never Walk Alone, which is sung by Mario Lanza, which absolutely killed me. A bit of British trivia, yeah, in the UK, it's a very iconic song with Jerry and the Pacemakers version being used as Liverpool FC's anthem. The calm is ruined by someone dropping a stink bomb though, which causes Will to knock over his teacher from earlier, and he's then put in detention. Now in that detention, we can see a chalkboard. It reads Mike loves Christine, with the latter being the name of a King book. There's also an F. Betty speech bubble, which might be a reference to Betty Ripson, who's a kid who went missing in the book. I couldn't find much on Susan and Burr, but the former's a character in Salem's Lot, and Bert's in Children of the Corn. Not to mention a crude drawing of the principal who's sodomizing the turtle. The turtle is of course a nod to Maturin, who's an opposite to Pennywise, and basically a giant galaxy-sized turtle that's the good force in the universe. It's fucking weird, but he was doing a lot of coke at the time. Not me though, I just drink Coca-Cola. The symbol of America. Either way though, getting sodomized shows Pennywise is winning here. At the moment, poor old Will stinks, but the pair get to know each other. Will asks if she was wrongfully accused, which ties into the theme of the episode and mirrors what happens to her father. I love how our new Losers Club is slowly forming though, with Will, Ronnie and the friend he made earlier. And Lilly. Or maybe not, we'll see how the lobotomy goes. She's surprised that he's actually reading textbooks for fun, and yeah, as we mentioned, he's very, very smart. He talks about space and being covered in stardust, and it did make me wonder if, like Mike in the books, he'll help research Pennywise. She calls him weird, but they kind of both are. The Losers Club, as you can guess, are a bunch of losers, and they're drawn together by fate in order to defeat Pennywise. The only way to defeat it is to work together and stay together. The kids who are taken, or the ones who see visions, you know, it's like Matty or when they go off on their own, but when working together and being close, they kind of use their united fight against fear to push back the beast. However, as I've said though, we do know some of the fates of these characters, and yeah, I'm saving that for the spoiler section. Looking out the window, Ronnie sees his Lilies taken by the police, showing that they're cracking down on the case. We then see the missing person signs at the police station. We have lots of different names, and as always, they're people who worked on the series. The first of these is Daniel Van Helding, who is a set designer. There's also Colin Woods, who is the supervising art director. Woods even has a clown toy, which foreshadows the clown himself turning up, and I did wonder if this was a real childhood photo. Next we see Lilly being interviewed by Clint Bowers. After the councilman put pressure on him, he's desperate to close the case and pin the kid's murder on Hank Grogan. We see her picking nervously at the orange soda label, which is the same drink that Teddy gave her before they went to investigate the voices. He unfairly points out she has a reputation of being crazy, and if there's no witnesses, she will be blamed for what happened. Bowers has booked her in for an evaluation, and she's petrified about returning to Juniper Hill. The book painted the asylum in a very poor light, with the orderlies using rolls of quarters to beat inmates. The intro, of course, showed a lobotomy, and, you know, that was common practice at mental health institutions, and yeah, it's been made famous by stuff like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So instead of being back there, she wrongfully accuses Hank. It leads Ronnie to be furious, and she confronts Lilly at her home. The pair will not be friends anytime soon, and I don't know if she's going to get to make it up to her, as despite betraying Ronnie, she still ends up taking back to Juniper Hill at the end of the episode. This is all because of a meltdown that she has at the supermarket where she thinks everyone's staring at her. And to be fair, she's right. As her mother's working, she's forced to do the shopping, and being isolated like this is the perfect grounds for Pennywise to strike. The fishmonger also looks similar to the actor Carsten Norgard, but I couldn't find any info on whether he was in the show. Just in general, you know, we do these episodes like about 5 days before the show's released to the public. We get them sent early. But they never put the cast lists out there. They never fucking put it out. So we're guessing all the time who these characters are. During this, we then get a quick cut of a can with a Native American figure on it. I believe this is another nod to The Shining, as these appeared behind Dick Halloran in the kitchen and basically sparked the whole theory that the film was a metaphor for the Native American genocide. Lilly walks around, purposely avoiding the pickle aisle, and there's all sorts of period-appropriate items on sale. The Tannoy voice then starts to repeat, and the aisles close in on her and turn into a repeating maze. She's called crazy, and the woman gives her a creepy look. Again, this isn't too different to the librarian in It Chapter 1, who was weirdly staring at Ben. This is then mirrored in the man who appears around the aisle and is very fucking creepy. He does the same lean into frame that Mrs. Kirsch did in the background, and then pops up behind her head, and normally I don't get affected by jump scares because I'm so desensitized to stuff, but the way he's following behind her with his head, it got me a bit. It's such an effective scare in general for the audience, and I think it's probably the creepiest thing Muschietti's done so far. The Tannoy also talks about how she's lost her marbles and basically people keep staring at her. This plays on what she thinks people think of her, and to be fair, a lot of them do. And while she doesn't care about the patty cakes necessarily, she does care if people think she's crazy. There's also a pregnant woman and her son, which fits the themes of pregnancy that we've seen so far, and a man and woman with a mop. The couple reminds me of the painting American Gothic, and I feel like that's an intentional nod of how the classic American image is now rejecting her. While she tries to escape the people, she also sees the kids who died last week on the cereal boxes. This leads her to run right into the pickle aisle. She's in a bit of a pickle. Her worst nightmare comes true, and then she gets a vision of her dad sliced up, and yeah, he was of course killed in the factory. The kids last week said there was a rumour that her dad's body parts ended up in different jars, which is something that's clearly been playing on her mind. Poor Lilly just can't catch a break, and it's a very similar effect to the skin lamp, with her face being cut up and displayed like this. A dad appearing like this is also similar to how Ben saw his father at the Barrens. As we mentioned earlier, the visions the kids see are all based around their worst fears, and he turns into an octopus tentacle monster, which again is what it was described as in the book. She then makes a big scene in the supermarket, and again, this leads to her mother sending her back to Juniper Hill, which great parenting there. At this point, we can also see it's raining in Derry, which is synonymous with the evil clown. It's what happened on the day of Georgie's attack, and there was a massive flood when Pennywise was killed. We also focus on the drain outside Juniper, which hammers at home. Pennywise, of course, lives in the sewers, and again, this runs under all the streets and houses. So the creature has access to everything. It indicates that evil is present, and this is shown further by the creepily smiling orderlies. I wonder if it's raining as well, because one of the artifacts is being dug up, and thus the evil is closer to being discovered. We then end with hush, 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 here comes the boogeyman, and that is the end of the episode. I'm going to go into my thoughts first, and then I'll do the spoiler section, so if you don't want to know, you've got enough time to check out. Overall though, this was a really solid entry, but I am a bit worried that they're a bit out there with the Pennywise search. I think it's a big swing they could absolutely mess up, and yeah, the whole man without fear thing, I'm kind of unsure about the moment. Especially because we've met Leroy down the line, and you think he'd want to get the hell away from the town. And yeah, it does kind of feel like a bit fan fiction-y to me, and the kind of thing you dream up when you need to add more lore in, but in doing so, you kind of overcomplicate the story. Like, I'm sure you've probably read a Star Wars expanded novel or something where they add loads of shit in, and it's like, you're just making shit up just to justify its existence. But yeah, they're at least linking it in quite well, as It Chapter 2 saw the Losers Club search for totems to burn as part of the ritual of Chud, which will show Pennywise's true form. So I wonder if the Native American tribe will try and intercept these dig sites and perform the ritual again. As Mike revealed, the original ritual killed those who tried it, as they didn't believe it. So this show might be showcasing that whole thing. I did feel that Chapter 2 felt far too long with the artifact hunt though, and I've always sort of felt like one long season of TV, which is kind of what we're doing here, so we'll see how that plays out. All that said though, I think the kid's story, as always, and like every iteration and adaptation, is the story's strong point. Whether it's the miniseries or the movies, that's always where the story strives. And it's even why Stranger Things basically ripped the whole thing off. So yeah, kids stuff great, adult stuff I'm enjoying it, but I'm also a bit worried, like, what the hell are they doing? I don't know if Pennywise should be behind the Cuban Missile Crisis. But yeah, we will see. Now, going into the spoiler section, it's not a massive one this, mate, but still worth warning you about. If you don't want to know, yeah, basically piss off, yeah, because I am going to spoil it. And I hate when people in the comments say, you fucking spoiled it. It's like, the show is called fucking Heavy Spoilers, and I'm giving you a spoiler warning. So yeah, just do one, basically. But yeah, we have talked about the movie reveal with Will, who was burned up in a fire, which heavily stuck with Mike. So yeah, Will make it out of this, but he's still got a very tragic fate ahead of him. I did even wonder if this would retroactively be Pennywise attacking Leroy for standing up to him, and maybe we'll see why it is that they burned. Because they didn't burn in the book, that was all new for the movie, but adding in the Leroy story, maybe Pennywise is going to hold a grudge or something. As for Veronica Groga, in the book, she's a very famous Pennywise victim. She was there as one of Bev's best friends, and just before the story started, mysteriously disappeared. Obviously, the book, had the Losers Club set in the 50s, with the movies and updating it to the 80s. That was so we could have a more modern setting, and Muschietti is now setting the stuff in the show with the characters that were mentioned in the 50s stuff in the books. That makes sense, right? Maddie Clemens was along with the kids who was killed in the story, so I do think Veronica might suffer the same fate. Or maybe she will time travel or something. But Bev did hear her voice specifically coming from the sewers in the books, and she's one of the names that talked to her in the bathroom. With Pennywise even saying, "It's me, Veronica Groga, we're down here, we all float." So it's not really looking good for her, especially with her dad going down as well, and her being isolated, other than her grandmother. But I'll be interested to see if they end up sticking with that. Overall, though, that wraps up the episode, and I'd of course love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, which you can type out and hit the thumbs up on your way down. If you want to follow us on Instagram and keep up to date with what we're doing as well, then make sure you check us out at Heavy Spoilers, as we will be posting lots of stuff over the next couple of weeks, kind of going through all the horror breakdowns that we're going to be doing on the channel. Did you know as well that members of the channel also get early access to videos, and if you click the join button, you get at least one breakdown a week before anyone else, and costs just 99 cents a month. So it's one of the cheapest things out right now. That's what we are. We're cheap. We're not. Are we worth it? 99 cents a month? I don't know. Maybe we are. Maybe we're not. A lot of you haven't signed up, so I'm guessing not. But yeah, if you do that, it all helps videos like this get made. And in return, you get a big breakdown every week. Huge thank you again to Scentbird for sponsoring today's video. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description and use the code SPOILERS2 to get 55% off your first month. Now, if you want something else to watch, we've got a video on screen right now, so yeah, definitely go head over there right after this, and I'll see you back next week, where we talk about it. Welcome to Derry, episode 3. Going to be very scary, and I might do a trailer breakdown if there's a one out, so yeah, keep an eye out for that, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care, peace.